Please be seated. Good afternoon. I'm Scott Beardsley, Dean of the Darden School of Business. Class of 2023, congratulations! Woo! What an honor it is to host this graduation here at Flagler Courtyard, and what a magical moment for us all to celebrate you and all your achievements. And I welcome friends and family that are joining us via live stream from around the world that couldn't be here in person. I'd like to take a minute to introduce a few of the friends and colleagues here on stage and to make a few brief remarks. Joining me on the stage are some of Darden's most senior leaders. Tom Steenberg is Richard S. Reynolds, Professor of Business Administration and Senior Associate Dean for the full-time MBA program. Yael Grushka-Cocaine is Altec Stuyvesant Foundation Bicentennial Chair in Business Administration and Senior Associate Dean for the professional degree programs. Also on stage are Sankaran Venkatraman, also more commonly known as Venkat, MasterCard Professor of Business Administration and Senior Associate Dean for Faculty and Research. And Justin Hopkins, J. Harvey Wilkinson Jr., Associate Professor of Business Administration. Justin is Chair of the Academic Standards Committee that follows the progress of our students and certifies your ability to get this degree, so he's your friend. And this year we have elected 3 faculty marshals and an honorary marshal for the class of 2023 who are here on stage with us. The full-time MBA class elected Professors Kinda Hashem. She's the Morris Plan Associate Professor of Consumer Credit in the Global Economies and Markets area, and also Peter Belmy, who holds the Scott C. Beardsley Associate Professor of Business Administration. How did that go? How did that happen? The Executive MBA class elected Luca Cian, Kilgallen, Ohio Art Associate Professor of Business Administration. This class's selection of these faculty marshals signifies the great esteem the students hold for these professors and for teaching excellence at Darden. In the Jeffersonian tradition, these faculty members led the Darden graduates down the lawn just a few hours ago this morning during UVA's final exercises. They exhibit the close connection between Darden scholars and students, and we recognize them today for their teaching and research excellence and unwavering energy and support of all of you. Please join me in congratulating and thanking also Kinda, Peter, and Luca. And also on stage is Honorary Marshal Robert F. Brunner. Bob Brunner is a university professor, Distinguished Professor of Business Administration, Dean Emeritus, my predecessor, of the Darden School of Business, and also a Senior Fellow of the Miller Center of Public Affairs. Dean Brunner will retire next month after 41 incredible years of transformational impact here at the Darden School. Ladies and gentlemen, let's recognize the amazing contributions of Dean Brunner. And I would also like to take this time to thank members of the Darden School faculty and staff who have worked so hard to prepare these wonderful ceremonies and for getting you all here. Their dedication is truly a hallmark of the Darden experience and the world's best educational experience. Please join me in thanking any faculty and staff who may have helped you along the way. And last, I would like to acknowledge all of those, your families and your friends, your loved ones, of the graduates particularly parents of those who have played those who've played the role of parent, whose encouragement and self-sacrifice without which you would not have been able to make it here. So let's take a minute, stand up and turn around and recognize all of those who helped you get here. Thank you so much, friends and family. Now I'd like to talk to you about something I've thought a lot about and struggled with throughout my life, and that's the subject of time. Have any of you ever struggled with dealing with time? Well, when I was growing up, my grandmother that we called Nana, she was an astrophysicist, and she would take me out to look at the night sky and tell me stories about outer space, Greek myths, sunspots, shooting stars, and the sense of wonder was infinite to me in those moments. And looking out at you today, I feel I am again looking at a galaxy of stars, each of you glowing with your own sense of possibility. Yet, when we see a star, we are seeing the past, as the light has traveled far. When I see you, I see the future, not the past. We live in a world framed by the three dimensions of space, but it is actually the fourth dimension, time, that holds many of the secrets to your future success. So let me share a few observations with you about time. Time is infinite, but our time on Earth is actually finite, around 36,500 days if you live to be 100. Time is an interrelated paradox of past, present, and future. We live in the now, but humans are amazing beings who can imagine themselves at different moments in time. We can live in the past, and often do, wishing we could rectify past mistakes. Or we spend time dreaming or even worrying about the future. Both habits, ironically, come at the expense of enjoying the here and now. What's for me especially mystifying about time is that we don't often value it until it's too late or something dramatic happens. We have a cornucopia of time until we don't. Did any of you notice how fast the end at Darden came, but how slow the beginning seemed to be? Well, I learned this lesson about time from an incredibly challenging moment in my life, when my mother died suddenly at age 51 of pancreas cancer. From diagnosis to death, it was about 2 weeks. That day, I learned that the most precious resource in the world is time. And it's also a riddle, kind of a conundrum. It's an unknown known. We know time will end, but we don't know when. I didn't know what to do, but I concluded I'd better get a lot better at mastering it. So how can you make the most of your time? How can you shift from being mastered by time to becoming its master? Let me share with you a few lessons I have learned, most of them the hard way, and maybe some of them will help you. The first lesson is to view time as an asset. Time is more like a balance sheet item, Luann, than an income statement. To what extent are you investing your time in long-term value creation and things that matter? One of the great freedoms we have in life is to decide how we spend our time. Make investments of time that are explicit to yourself. Recognize that investments of time pay off over time. They compound in value and in unforeseen ways. The opportunity, quote unquote, cost of time and the translation of your time into value actually changes over time. Value is not only measured in dollars. For example, what is the value of spending time coaching your child's sports team? How much is that worth? In French, there's this beautiful expression. It says, "Donnez le temps au temps." Give time to time. In other words, some good things, like relationships or wine, have a natural rhythm and they actually need time. And sometimes you need to invest time to get time. Very counterintuitive. Part of seeing time as an asset is to realize that different goals have different time frames and payoffs. Personal goals might include things like family, passions or hobbies, or using key values and character traits that are important to you. Professional goals might include things like money, skills, experiences, or some kind of milestone that you may have. All have their own time frames, currencies, alphas, and betas, just like different asset classes. Long-term goals might include things like financial independence by a certain age, building a company that makes the world a better place, raising a wonderful family, or helping other talented people achieve their full potential. Short-term goals, however, might be able to be adjusted on a daily basis to reflect the ever-changing environment we live in, such as completing a deliverable or maybe squeezing a workout in. Periodically think about what your goals are and how you allocate time to them. As you discover what really matters to you and as your life circumstances change. Because time is an asset, you need to build a diversified portfolio. As you reach for the stars and you want it all on every axis of life, consider that not all items that take time have the same value, and not all items that are valuable take a lot of time. For example, I learned that client development takes roughly the same amount of time to negotiate a small project as to negotiate a big one. In your personal life, spending an hour with a loved one at the right moment may be invaluable. That 1 hour may have just been all that mattered. Create option value for yourself by experimenting with time or allocating small amounts to something you know is valuable to you. Balance your portfolio with some big and little things you are shooting for. Get the big things right: your career, your family, your health. Every portfolio will have some failures in it. That's what happens. But all good portfolios will be diversified and have some grand slams. The second lesson is to use the power of the calendar. Simply said, what gets scheduled gets done. To achieve your goals, get your defaults broadly right and use the power of the calendar. Aristotle famously said, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence is therefore a habit." Let me ask you something. Are the things you do repeatedly those at which you really want to excel? What default activities do you schedule daily, monthly, annually? What consumes your time? I have found several defaults to be critical for maintaining the productivity of your total time overtime. No one else will schedule these defaults for you if you don't. So they include some of the following: vacation and time for recharging. What I call structured, unstructured time for thinking and creativity. Time to be present, I mean really present, without your phones on, for thinking, for important family or interpersonal issues, like we're doing right now. Sleeping, eating, and exercise, super important, or major professional obligations and travel. If you don't schedule it, it's not happening. You should be great at these, not just good. You should be great at these, as they will drive your productivity, but more importantly, they will drive your happiness and well-being. Of course, there is no substitute for hard work, and there may be crunch times when you've got to grind it out and focus on one thing at the expense of all others. There will be crises. You have to be flexible and nimble. But the defaults are kind of like guardrails on a highway as you're driving down. And they're going to provide longer-term sustainability for you. Work expands to fill the time you give it. And it's a very greedy thing, work. It will take all of it. Counterintuitively, you may need to invest time outside of work in order to be able to get work done at work, because it will give you the energy to do so. Examine your habits carefully, because they are what you end up repeatedly doing. And using the power of the calendar also means leveraging your time. One way to expand time is to increase the output per unit of time input. I've found that there's a few ways to do that. How do you make more time? First, spend time to build a great team that has complementary skills to your own and that can provide leverage to help you execute on your vision. Remember to recruit other people to help you at home or at work so that you can focus on things that only you can do. Secondly, build some skills that help you to amplify your time, such as certain technology tools, or critical path management skills, or doing things in parallel. Third, manage your energy so that you have the maximum output per unit of time spent. As James Lair wrote in The Power of Full Engagement, that I teach in one of my classes, there are many forms of energy: spiritual, emotional, mental, and physical. But you cannot expend more energy than you have, and energy is needed to get things done on time. So, what are you doing to give yourself more energy? Be aware of certain bad habits or time drains and eliminate or curtail the unnecessary. For example, how much time do you need to spend doom scrolling on social media? It's a really good question. For example, I have learned the hard way that lots of wine and little sleep does not lead to me doing better. Did not improve my total productivity. Leveraging the calendar also means trying to be on time. In many ways, showing up is half of success. Now, it's quite ironic that I say this. When I graduated from college, I asked my grandfather what advice he had for me to be successful in the working world. And he said, the most important thing you can do is to be on time to work. That is not what I wanted to hear, because that is not my specialty, and I was always the last one on the bus in the morning. And to my horror, on my first day of work out of undergraduate, I overslept by 2.5 hours and I was late to work. I arrived at 11. I literally thought I was going to have a heart attack. The broader point for me is that showing up and being fully present when you do is critical. When I was a partner at McKinsey, I developed clients all over the world, far away from Belgium where we lived, places like the United Arab Emirates or Qatar. And part of the reason I was able to do that was that I actually showed up. It was important to just be there. The third and final lesson I'd like to share with you is that your time is yours. So make the most of it. I'd like to talk to you just a minute about the where, when, and who of time. You do have a choice on those 3 dimensions. Where? Where do you live and spend your time? Where you live and work are key drivers of your well-being, as they affect a huge percentage of our waking hours. When? Seems simple, but when will you do things, actually? Should you take a time out, or are you out of time? They say timing is everything. Dan Pink has written a really great book on when. It's called When. Decide when to do things like exercise, read, think, even when you're making a decision, or when you're going to sleep or not, like last night. I have learned that I write exponentially faster early in the morning after a good night's sleep than if I try and do it as a night owl late at night. That's one of the things I learned about when. I wish I had learned it a lot earlier. And let's talk about who for a second. With whom do you do things? Why? Why do you spend time with them? Invest times in relationship with people you value. One of the best decisions I made in my life was to marry my wife Claire of 35 years. Choose your spouse well, or your loved one. Thank you, Claire. More simply, spend your time with good people. You have a choice. Make the most of the moment. We learn in financial theory about the time value of money. We can discount the cash flows to the net present value with a discount rate, right? The WACC. Not the wine and cheese club at Darden, the WACC, the weighted average cost of capital. The further out the cash flow, the less valuable it is, right? That's what the theory says. We often act as if the exact opposite is true with time. We often assume that the future is more valuable than the present. So we discount the present for the future. Very counterintuitive. The net result of that is that we don't make the most of the moment a lot of the time. Rafa Nadal, professional tennis player and one of the greatest ever, and one of the most fiercest competitors of any sport, on the court or off the court, is said to have commented as follows: play each point as if it is the most important thing in the world, except remember that it isn't. Thus, optimizing your time is a mindset, strongly influenced by who, when, and where you invest it. We live in the now. Can you see the beauty of this moment? Let time stand still. The future and the past are overrated. In sum, view time as an asset. Use the power of the calendar and make the most of your time. My hope for you is that you will have the time of your life in the time of your life. That the portfolio of your time will make you very rich as measured by a great life. Your time is now. Darden graduates, class of 2023, get out there and change the world in the ways you are meant to. There is no time to waste. Thank you very much. Enough from me. Now it's time for the fun part. Time to hear from our students, to hear from you. I'm delighted to welcome on stage Darden Student Association President Tyler Kelly and Darden Student Association Executive Vice President Mariah Horner, who represent the full-time MBA. And I am also delighted to welcome Nate Carlson, who is President of the Executive MBA Student Association. They will give a short welcome and invite our student speakers up here to talk to you. Nate, we'll start with you.
Go, Nate!
Dean Beardsley, thank you for the introduction. I really appreciate it, and for the message. I think I speak for all of us here, both residential and executive, when I say that there was probably a moment somewhere between October of first year and February of first year that we felt like we all lived about 36,000 days in that core. Man, class of 2023, let's just take a moment. Like, this is incredible. This really is. I was reflecting on that this morning as I was trying to get my robe on, and thank goodness the faculty has already voted that I can graduate, because I think had anybody else witnessed that, I'm not sure I would be able to walk today. But I would just like to reiterate that the gratitude on behalf of my classmates for the family and friends that are here behind us. Thank you to each of you for being the dream fulfillers that you are, and for supporting each of us as we've gone through this program. It has been a lot, and it is a complete team effort, and we are so appreciative that y'all have helped us through this time. I would also like to say personally, thank you to each of my classmates for how you have contributed to my learning in some way. Whether it be a thought-provoking comment made in class that I've had to marinate on for weeks, whether it was last-minute tutoring for Accounting 2. Actually, John, Forbes, that was actually just you, so really thank you. But you all, through being present, making the most of our time together, being vulnerable with each other, y'all have enriched my experience so much and made me a better person and a better leader because of it. As we transition now to our class speaker, Brigadier General Bobby Doornbos, I would like to share a few things about her. Bobby's over there looking at me like I have no idea what he is about to say, and so that's the exact reason why I'm going to share a few things about you. Bobby was a pilot in the Air National Guard, flying F-16 fighter pilots. In her career, she participated in Operations Noble Eagle and Iraqi Freedom, among others. In 2007, Bobby served as a White House Fellow and was tapped to serve as a special advisor to then Vice President Joe Biden. These are a few highlights of her professional career, but I think for us as classmates, what we can all agree about is Bobby's humility and work ethic and her ever willingness to help somebody in need. And I think when I think about Bobby, I think about so many other of you as my classmates that really embody what is special about Darden. It's that brilliance that you all bring to the table, but the humility and the work ethic and the willingness to help somebody out. And I would just like to thank each of you for allowing me to be a part of this class. Without further ado, I would like to welcome to the stage our class speaker, Bobby Doornbos.
Not many people refer to the word brilliance and my name in the same sentence, so Nate, thank you so much. Wow, this is pretty cool. Family, friends, faculty, and graduates, good afternoon and welcome. It is such a pleasure to see all of your happy, bright, and joyous faces today on this very well-deserved occasion. Like many of you, there were moments when I wondered whether this day would actually come, particularly in the depths of quarter three, but also because this MBA took me a bit longer than 22 months to complete. See, I actually started my MBA 29 years ago in 1994 with an accounting class at Drake University. 29 years ago was about 4 months before Natalie was born. After that accounting class, I quickly decided that raising my hand to join the military and with the potential of seeing combat would be preferable to suffering another quant course. Between that first fateful accounting class and now, I went on to serve almost 25 years in the military, and I know that some of my fellow veterans fellow veterans in the audience will relate to the unbreakable bonds that come with deploying into combat. And so as I reflected on our journey at Darden and my own military service, it occurred to me that there are some unmistakable parallels worth noting. In combat, as at Darden, our shared experiences of difficulty make us feel much closer to those who endure alongside us. We both experience extreme pride in surviving challenges that at times felt insurmountable. Some of us bear the scars of battle, whether they be physical, mental, or emotional, for things that we've endured during this time. And some days, someone stronger than us shouldered our weight, carried us through, and even saved our life. And importantly, the experience makes us realize that we are stronger and more capable than we ever thought possible. After all, the hottest fires forge the strongest steel. The bonds of combat, like the bonds that we formed at Darden, are as strong as they get. Also after combat, 2 words, baby, boom. Coincidence? I think not. In both combat and Darden, heroes emerge who deserve recognition and thanks. Over the last 2 years, we've retreated into a cocoon of our own making, forced to task shed, radically prioritize only those things required to sustain life, and to make difficult choices about how and with whom we spent our time. In that process, families, partners, and friends bore extra burdens, took on additional responsibilities, and suffered our absence, yet at the same time gave us their love, support, and understanding throughout. A round of applause for them, please. We could have done none of this without you, and today is as much a celebration of you as us. Thank you for having our backs. And to our front are the faculty and professors who so artfully balanced the give and take required with Socratic case method instruction, particularly with a group of 135 tired, overworked, stressed out, and sometimes hungover students. You, Darden instructors, are heroes as well, the masters of recognizing the nonverbal cues of students slouching as low in the chair as possible, averting eye contact, and rummaging through one's backpack to avoid cold calls. For delivering this MBA program with both rigor and compassion, you deserve your own round of applause. Thank you. And so we emerge from our cocoons today transformed, as I've heard so many of you describe the experience. Transformed much as a caterpillar becomes a butterfly. We are transformed as much by the doing of difficult things as by the people we do them with. And certainly, Darden class of 2023, doing Darden by your side has been the transformation of a lifetime for me. They say that you become the average of the 5 people you hang out with most. And by that measure, I stand before you elevated, expanded, and improved by your proximity these last 22 months. You have elevated my intellect, you've expanded my perspectives, and you've improved my capacity for open-mindedness, respectful dialogue, and vulnerability. In fact, the only thing I can think of that stands degraded as a result of this experience is my poor, poor liver. And it was already old to begin with. But you have certainly youthened my spirit. Using the average of 5 people formula, I now figure my Darden age to be roughly 36, down from 53. But in all seriousness, you have reminded me that age is simply a state of mind, and I thank you for that. So yes, we are all undeniably altered by our 22-month Darden journey that was both excruciatingly long, and now that it's over, feels almost cruelly short at the same time. But finally, we're here today with justified pride and extreme gratitude for what these last 2 years have taught us about business, life, and the strength that lies within us. Speaking of cruelly short, my time is up, so I'm going to conclude with a poem that will give you the last word, Darden class of 2023. Are you ready? Okay. Oh, dear graduates, the end has come. A journey complete, a chapter done. Through triumphs and failures, we stood side by side, laughing and crying on this incredible ride. Amidst the stress and the endless grind, we found solace, kindness, and joys combined. From fancy cocktails to a humble beer, we toasted our successes and conquered our fear. Through this MBA journey, through thick and thin, we created true friendships, our cherished win. Through challenges faced, both home and scholastic, we made it, my friends, and it was that actually went way better than I had possibly hoped for. And with a hat tip to Professor Carraway, the preceding poem was brought to you courtesy of ChatGPT with minor tweaks. Congratulations, class of 2023, and thank you. All right. So at this time, I'd like to invite Tyler Kelly and Mariah Horner to the podium. Kelly, all right, there you have it. Here they come. Thanks, guys.
Thank you so much for your words, Bobby. We are Mariah and Tyler. We are the Executive Vice President and President of the Darden Student Association. And we're very excited and so grateful to be with all of you today.
Class of 2023, we did it. Darden would literally not be what it is today with all of the amazing leaders sitting in this crowd. The ones who invited people into their homes, the ones who led in student clubs, and the ones who were shoulders to cry on in times of difficulty. As a class, we have accomplished a lot this year, including making club participation accessible to all students, improving support structures in the academic and professional realms of the Darden experience, sharing your collective voices to enhance the Darden dining experience, wink, wink, supporting one another during challenging times and tragic moments, and so much more. And many of us couldn't have done it without our partners and families. Thank you. Thanks, babe. We share great appreciation also for the hardworking staff and amazing faculty for making our Darden experience what it is and so special. Thanks to the entire Darden community for doing your part in creating a transformative experience that we will all remember for the rest of our lives.
We're delighted today to introduce to you our class speaker, Sakari Brown. Sakari was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, and obtained her bachelor's in civil engineering from NYU before moving to the DC area, working in construction, consulting, and private equity. Since starting at Darden, Sakari has been very involved on grounds in various roles, including president of the Darden Private Equity Club, portfolio manager in Darden Capital Management, and a second-year coach. Due to her exceptional service to the school, she was honored with the C. Stewart Shepard Distinguished Service Award in September. She is a proud Robert Twigo Fellow, Consortium Fellow, and Forte Fellow. Over the last 2 years, Sakari has interned at 2 venture capital firms and 1 private equity firm, applying her learnings from the Darden classroom to real life.
Sakari's impact extends beyond the classroom and the work environment. She's a superstar and an advocate to all of her classmates as well. So we asked several members of the Darden class to share a note about how Sakari has impacted them during their time here, and here are just a few examples.
One student said, "Sakari taught me what it means to be an effective and empathetic leader, encouraging me to become a better manager and leader myself. She has an amazing ability to motivate and manage people."
Another student said, "Sakari has shown our class how to aim high, fight for what we believe in, and lead by example while remaining connected to our true selves."
Another declared, "When I want to grow up, I want to be Sakari Brown." She's an unflappable leader, a finance queen, everyone's best friend, and one of the funniest people you'll ever meet.
I am so excited to introduce you all to Sakari Brown, a dear friend and a sister to me. I could go on and on about how much Sakari has impacted me and about how much I appreciate her, but we will simply say that she's amazing. Sakari, you are loved, and Darden is very lucky to have you. Please join us in welcoming Sakari Brown.
Thank you. I told them I wasn't going to cry, and so I guess that was the surprise, the words from everybody. I really appreciate it. Well, I want to tell you a little secret. When I made my deposit to join Darden class of 2023, I actually was not 100% sold on this place. And I think I could say that now because, we're here, right? I got my grades and all that stuff. But I really did wonder if this was actually the best place for me. Like, I knew the admissions team, the faculty, the staff that I met was the most welcoming of all the schools during my application journey. I also knew that Darden was the only school that really made me feel like a human, not just another application for their system. But I still felt unsure. Would I be able to build upon my private equity experience? Would I be able to handle core? Would I even like Charlottesville? Because as you heard, I'm from Brooklyn, and that is very different than Charlottesville. I didn't really have an answer to any of those questions, but I did know that Darden met most of the criteria that I had for business school. So with that anchoring me, I packed up my things, I grabbed a matcha latte, which is on brand, drove 2 hours south, and moved into my, let's call it retro apartment at Ivy Gardens. And there I was, full of uncertainty, but also full of willingness to just be open right? Despite not having all of the details. And some people, you might say that's the perfect attitude for someone who's signing up for the case method for 2 years, right? Because we usually don't get all the details. But the rest of you might be thinking, that's a little wild, disrupting your consistent paycheck when you were so unsure. But there was just something about the potential opportunity on the other side. During a class I took recently with Jackie Doyle, Darden alum Tom Baltimore said, "A period of dislocation creates amazing opportunity." And he framed this in the context of finance. But the reality is that all of us a few years ago signed up for a period of dislocation. Some of us had a clear picture of what that decision would bring, and some of us really had no idea, but we said YOLO and went for it anyway. So here we are on this beautiful but hot graduation day, having survived 2 years of cases, including the 15-plus page cases from our esteemed colleagues at the Darden of the North. And we've survived cold calls on the days we didn't read the cases. We've survived being fired in FMP, the Coca-Cola versus Pepsi challenge, the salad lines in Abbott, and the intensity of Darden Cup basketball, because I still have some scars from that whole festivities, I don't know. But our opportunities have been plentiful. If you think about it for a second, where would your life be without the opportunity to hear the roars of the lions of Section A? Or how about the food and fellowship with the Taco Tuesday crew? What about the beauty of celebrating Diwali or sitting in on Darden stories with some of your closest friends? I can't forget about singing our hearts out at Dirty Nelly's with Philly Joe, or spending money we really don't have at the BGIA auction. Social scene aside, we've really had the opportunity to learn from some of the best professors and from each other. We've had the chance to take almost 2 years to explore business and to really better understand ourselves. And for some of us, we were the first to do this, the first to leave our home countries, the first to work in the field of our choosing, and the first to make the money we make, or, I guess we're about to make. I know start dates is a sensitive topic. If you think about your 2 years as a case, though, what decisions did you make during this time that aligned to your original criteria? Without all of the information, how did you go about solving for your original goal? Are you happy with the decisions that you've made here? Your experience may not have been perfect, but did your experience trigger progress? During an ethics class, Ed Freeman said, just because you can't solve anything doesn't mean you can't do anything. I initially couldn't solve for the uncertainty I felt about Darden, but that didn't stop me from acting and ultimately reaping the benefits. I'm proud to report that I have gone from being uncertain about Darden to drinking the Darden Kool-Aid like I'm doing a keg stand at the DMA tailgate. And whether it was a BBSA Lunch and Learn, a DCM stock pitch, the Pad Drag Show, bachata at hand, Lhasa barbecues, keeping track of Black Tahoes, yoga classes with the Resilience Club, exploring Afrobeats and Suya at the Dabo Marketplace, somehow surviving TNDC, playing golf instead of doing cases, the Beer Olympics, or grabbing the snacks from our IMBA friends when they weren't looking. Sorry, guys. We really did have an experience that afforded us new opportunities to progress as the global leaders we aspire to be. As we leave this place and take on the roles of masters in business, my hope is that we continue to take action in moments of uncertainty. My hope is that whether you are here with us in person or you are with your family participating remotely, you feel connected to the pockets of energy at Darden that made a positive deposit in your life. As you consider the career before you, don't let uncertainty stop you. Feel the fear and do it anyway, except if it means going to jail, okay? Always remember that progress is greater than perfection, so seek progress above all else. Thank you to my classmates for uplifting and embracing this chocolate drop from Brooklyn, New York. Thank you to the fantastic faculty and staff for challenging us and cheering us on, to our family and friends for supporting us, and of course, a special shout out to my heart, David, for keeping me anchored during this whole experience. My time here, I guess, is up, because I know I'm standing between us and the stage. But if nothing else sticks today, just hold close the words of a profound philosopher, Christopher Wallace, also known as the Notorious B.I.G. He said, "Stay far from timid, only make moves when your heart's in it, and live the phrase, sky's the limit." Thank you, guys.
Thank you both for those amazing words. We now begin the process of awarding degrees. We will begin by awarding dual degrees, followed by the Master of Science in Business Analytics degree, and then we will award the Master of Business Administration degree. For dual degree, Kenda is going to read.
He's not here. Yeah, yeah. Okay. Okay, so start with Craig. So this, he's the only one who's here then? Okay, he's not here? Okay. All right. Shall we start? Okay, now the citation. All right, let's go. The following students have completed the degree with Juris Doctorate: Craig Campbell, the following student has completed the degree with Doctor of Medicine: Stephen Lucas McCarr. The following students have completed the degree with Master of Education: Jacob Gerald Blumenthal, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Emily Rose Hatton. Mariah Kwan Horner, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence, and Edgar F. Shannon Award. The citation reads, on behalf of the Z Society, I would like to present the 2023 Edgar F. Shannon Award for the Darden School of Business to Mariah Horner. The Z Society Shannon Award recognizes the quote-unquote best graduating student from each school within the university. This award is given because Mariah's incredible academic successes and passionate extracurricular involvements have attracted the attention both of the Z Society and of her peers, professors, and administrators. We congratulate you, Mariah, for this prestigious award and 2 years well spent, and furthermore, we challenge you to pursue greatness just as fervently in the many years to come. Congratulations. Emily Kahn, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Tyler Kelly, C. Stuart Shepard Distinguished Service Award. The citation reads, for elevating the Darden student experience through his dedicated service as Darden Student Association President and co-chair of the First Year Student Admissions Committee. Tyler's genuine approachability, thoughtful leadership, and listening ear have built countless bridges and fostered change that will benefit students for years to come. Congratulations. Nina Kriza, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Hannah Soloff Malowitz. Jade Alyssa McLaughlin. Fannie Mae.
Good job, Fanny.
Skylar Beth Pooja Vidal, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. The following student has completed the degree with Master of Public Policy, Steve Hahn. The following students have completed the degree with Master of Science, Data Science, Ryan Spencer Cox, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Benjamin Robert Wilson. Douglas Edwin Zyman, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence.
Yes, keep these for later. No problem.
Executive MBA 2003. Yay! What a fantastic class. I am so honored and happy to read your names in Italian, so let's do it. All right. Vishnu Anantmula. Woo! Alexander Terry Arnsmeyer. Claire Ann Azert. She wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Congratulations. Alan Gregory Barkman. Brittany Macmillan Barrett. Amanda Joy Baxter. Taylor J. Bennett. Elizabeth Ann Murphy Bianchi. Daniel J. Birnbaum. He wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Congratulations. Sarah Morris Boshang. Woo! Matthew Lovell Boyd. Elizabeth Ann Cozart Boyles. Samuel Hunter Brennan. Elizabeth Ann Brunette. She wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Woohoo! Alexandria Camp Brylowski. Sarah Robinson Burnett. Mary Catherine Hamilton Burns. Ryan Burns. Anastasia Kabalova. She wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Melissa Hickey Kanan. Peter James Canonico. And Shavont Carella. She wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. All right. So, Aaron Michael Carson. Ryan Nathaniel Carson. Woohoo! Christopher McClelland Carmichael. John Augustus Sankaran Carpenter. Evan Cass. Zachary Neil Dalkey. Nisha K. Dalla. Jonathan Edward Dangle. Bobby Joe Dorenbos. Woo! Catherine Adams Drive. Samuel Achilles Dwyer. Yeah. Robert Paul Edwards. Amy Delavan Egley. John Peter Elsey. He wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Congratulations. Congratulations. Michael Dimok Emery. Lashandra Jones Irvin. Carlos Alberto Escobar Sáenz. Garrett Michael Favier. John David Forbes. He wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence and the C. Stewart Shepard Distinguished Service Award. The citation reads, for his tireless dedication, commitment, and service as a tutoring coordinator, John consistently went above and beyond to support academic success of his peers, while also serving as a key member of the Darden Executive Fund and DEI Committee. John is a true friend to many and emblematic of a leader at Darden. Canon Everett Fordner. Scott Raymond Frank. Allison Taylor Garrett. James Barker Gerson. Maciej Godleski. John S. Grant. Woohoo! Matthew Scott Gray. Stephen James Gripshaw. All right. Essa Harrington. He wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Jake Walter Heller. Morgan Lynn Herman. Deborah Hardon. Woohoo! Elizabeth Land Horton. Cameron Horvath. Stephanie Q. Howard. Peter Roberts Hewitt. He wins the Stewart Shepard Distinguished Service Award. Yeah. And the citation reads, for his exceptional service as ESA Vice President of Communication. Peter's genuine dedication, enthusiasm, and creative spirit captivated the minds of many. The Darden community was strengthened through his generous action and ever-flowing acts of kindness. And there is even more. Peter is a model servant leader to the community. Yeah. Congratulations. All right. Katie Wynn. Ghislaine Abulajul Idrissi. Sarah Manan Iqbal. Amy Marie Jackson. Ashish Jain. Woo! Michael James Jones Hennessy. He wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Congratulations. Tanvir Imtiaz Katawala. Evan Alexander Keller. Alexander Gray Bates Kelly. Sean Eric Kelly. Matthew Michael Camp. All right. Yeah, celebrating for you here. Catherine Edmonds Kenny. Woo! Erica Claire Keo. Andrea Shamal Key. Alison Desborough Landis. Lacey Lemming. Woo! Jessica Gilhouse Lukens. Daniela McKender. Jared M. Mack. Courtney O'Keefe Marr. Christopher William Markley. Christopher Vincent McCliff. Linda Nicole McLeish Lopez. Daniel John McLaughlin. Colleen Harish Mehta. Alexander Guillermo Merida. Wallace Earl Miller II. George Hunter Mitchell. Nora Dawn Momani. Manuela Monsalve. Amanda Michelle Montenegro. Jacqueline Marie Mary. She wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Congratulations. Jabril Cortez Norcott. Woo! John Francisco O'Boyle. Patrick Richard O'Brien. Woo! All right. Matthew Michael O'Mara. William Carl Peterson Jr. Alexander A. Pierre. Woo. Lauren Gilligan Polovich. Woo! Donald J. Reynolds. Remington Jeffrey Roth. He wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Joshua Edward Rubalki. Holly Sampson. Scott Peter Sarlin. He wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. He also wins the Darden Executive MBA Faculty Award. The citation reads, for bringing an enterprise perspective and exceptional intellectual insight into the classroom, Scott contributed to class discussion in an empathetic, effective, and inclusive manner. His work experience brought great depth to academic conversation and allowed for valuable perspectives. Scott is a humble, welcoming, and strong communicator and a role model to others. His contributions are invaluable to Darden students and faculty alike. Congratulations, Shante Savage. Erin F. Schneider. Alison Marie Searles, 5-time residential, so congratulations, traveling all over the world. All right, Jesse Patrick Searles, he wins the Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Ryan Neil Shipley, Mohammed Usama Siddiqui, Sean Michael Simmons, Caitlin Lauren Sloan. She wins the Stewart Shepard Distinguished Service Award, and the citation reads, for her advocacy for mental health support and resources for the professional degree population. Caitlin worked closely with Darden leadership to secure the long-term capability to provide the professional degree students with mental health resources. Caitlin champions wellness, leads by example, and leaves a great legacy for the criticality of these resources for all future students. Congratulations! Okay, Rachel Elizabeth Smolkin. And Hannah Hawkins Solomon. Mary Catherine Stabler. Bahara Stapleberg. Annette Carey Stock. Leah Duffy Svoboda. She wins the Stewart Shepard Distinguished Service Award, and the citation reads, for her exemplary service to Darden as the president of the Network of Executive Women and member of the Outreach Committee. Leah's enthusiasm, inclusiveness, and true dedication as a leader radiated throughout the program. From supporting the inaugural Women's Summit, to hosting book clubs with faculty, to organizing events to support the homeless in the DC Metro, Leah was steadfast in her service to Darden and the community. Congratulations! William Stewart Semington. Natalie Monica Schmidt. Sachin Odia Taylor. Jessica Phillip Tyson. Grace Harwood Ubersachs. Matthew Vincent Van. Mary Catherine Waltz. Joy Weber. Stephanie Ross West. Richard John Willock. Daniel Demetrio Guerrini Wilcox. Claire Worth. Morgan S. Yam. Garrett Yardumian. And the grand finale, the troublemaker, Slavomir Leon Zapata. Thank you again. Fantastic being here.
All right, I'm back without the fancy Italian accent. The following students have completed the degree program in Master of Business Administration. Christine Abbott. Kende Daniel Abiodun. Taiwo Joshua Abiodun. C. Stuart Shepard Distinguished Service Award. The citation reads, "For his tremendous commitment as president of the Darden Finance Club, Taiwo's enthusiasm, effective communication, active listening, and willingness to go above and beyond for others have helped Darden students through mentorship, knowledge sharing, and leadership." Congratulations. Bethany Ackerman. Adeshola Oluwatosin Adelaja, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Aman Agassi. Amanda Michelle Ager. Linz Jr. Agokeng. Celia Son Adenoff. Sina Alavi. Slow down. Edward Turner Allison. Rebecca Ameble. Emmanuel Kwame Amuabeng Jr. Juhi Amadwala. Ryan Edward Amoroso, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Raymat Olamide Amosu. Corey William Andre. Florencia Angelica. Emily Hagan Anthony. Jessica Natalie Arenas Horodo. Olasunkanmi Jeffrey Asanmonu. Oluwatoyin Funmilayo Ayodele. Andre Azevedo Dalbuquerque. Jonathan Ross Barham, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Natalie Barbarisi. J. Anthony Barden. Vashti Barron. Benjamin Beardsley. Elizabeth Ann Belair. Jack Alexander Bonazzo. Christian Andres Benito Sweat. Maria Del Pilar Uribe Bennett. Brian Neftali Braduo Gonzalez. Christopher Michael Best. Blake Bethay, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Kara Betts. Sunayana Bhatia. Harshita Biddasaria. Michael Reuven Biderman. Brittany Michelle Biggs. Victor Salim Batar. Bar Botzer. Benjamin Ashford Bovard. Matthew McPeak Brandon. Enes Junaid Surya. James Tyler Braun, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Tyrese Javon Brewington. Catherine DeWolf Brown. Sophie Grace Brown. Sukari Ayana Brown. Tyler James Brown. Stephanie A. Calderon Zuniga. Adeline Luciana Calderon. William James Campbell, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Annabelle Cater, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Manuel Francisco Chambergo Zavaleta. Joseph Ignatius Clark. Skylar Dana Clark Hamill. Catherine Bridget Cleary. Wade Frost Clement. Emily Ann Corelli, C. Stewart Shepard Distinguished Service Award. The citation reads, for her exemplary commitment to fostering community and fun at Darden, Emily's dedication, creativity, and passion for bringing others together have helped build lasting memories and meaningful friendships from the section classroom to the ski slopes. Congratulations. Monet Marissa Covington. Carson Sturdivant Creasy. Varsha Dada. Michael Ryan DeLong. Brooke Kinsey DeMayo. Tejo Tarun Devareddy. Adele Enrique Diaz Franco. Anna Carmen Diaz Hernandez. Thomas K. Dolce. Frank Anthony Donato. Gabriel Antonio Dos Reis. Ethan Robert Dow. Christoph Thomas Drapanis. Jennifer Stephan D'Souza. Malcolm Owen Dunlop. Salorm Komla Jamefe. Sean Patrick Eichenberger, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Jacob Allen Eichengreen, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Grace Ann Elliott. John Lars Blackstone Eli. Stephen Edward Erickson, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Bianca Elise Salvador Ayales, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence, and Frederick S. Morton Leadership Award. The citation reads, in recognition of her outstanding contributions to the Darden community as DSA Vice President of International, Bianca's impeccable planning, unfailing positivity, and tireless advocacy have opened doors, minds, and hearts. From the classroom to the boardroom, Bianca's growth-minded leadership, passion for a better world, and genuine care for others could be felt in every corner of Darden. Described as an impactful and inclusive leader, Bianca leaves a lasting legacy that will be felt for years to come. Congratulations. Ahmed Rashid Farah. Nicholas Farmer. Dele Desmond Fashola. Alexander John Fedorenko. Daniela Maria Fernandez Estrada, C. Stewart Shepard Distinguished Service Award. The citation reads, for her remarkable passion for the arts and building community, Daniela is the definition of a thoughtful, inclusive leader and artist, lifting her voice through song and leadership to make Darden a better place for incoming and future students around the world. Congratulations. Bertrand Sebastian Tankiang Ferrer. Pablo Alfredo Fleites Haliburda. William Thomas Fubini. Tanmay Gadre. Claire Anderson Galpern. Lillian Garner Gansky. Isaiah D. Garcia. Manu Sankara B. Gargaya. Pablo Gatica Petrovich. Brandon O'Neill Gilbert. Kevin Lamont Gillespie. Sean Timothy Godfrey, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Austin David Goldfein. Alyssa Joy Gonzalez. Rajiv Gopi Kesavan. Yash Mahendra Gore. Joanna Lauren Gurej. Parvati Govind. Venetia Goyal. Emily Ann Green. Jaime Alejandro Grego. Emily Ann Gristovich. Anirudh Gupta. Apurv Gupta, Nitin Sajan Gutha, Bhakti Holder, Stephen Essen Ham Jr., Daniel John Hansen, Thomas Joseph Haverty, Claudia Coker Heath, Evan Patrick Heldman, Theodore Julian Hess Jr., Faculty Award for Academic Excellence, Alexander Hong, Robert Paul Houghton, Jason Su, Megan Elizabeth Hunsinger, C. Stewart Shepard Distinguished Service Award. The citation reads, for her remarkable work as Darden Student Association Vice President of Leadership and Section A Representation, Megan's leadership, organization, and tremendous community spirit have left a lasting mark on Darden Club, student engagement, and university life at large. Congratulations. He's not here. Rachel Marie Hurst. Julia Highland. Andres Ernesto Ibarguren Buendia. Allison Lee Ingram. Sebastian Izurieta. Samuel Barrett Jackson. Roberto Jaime Garza, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Nikhil Ashok Jain. Shreyans Jain. Mariam Javakaya. Minkyung Jiang. Xingyi Jiang, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Yu Young Jin. Caroline Lee Johnson. Nurali Kansara, C. Stewart Shepard Distinguished Service Award. The citation reads, for her exceptional work in planning the inaugural Emerging Markets Conference, Nurali's keen eye, thoughtful organization, and ability to bring others together helped write the playbook for all future conferences and club collaborations, leaving an indelible impact on Darden's global brand. Congratulations. Sahar Khan. Alexander Kodina King. Lucille Halswade King, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Mark John Kington Jr.
Catherine Kirchner. Tatiana Kosheleva. Brian Edgar Krentz, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Praveen Kumar Krishnamurthy, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Minnie Lahoti. Justin Langley. Megan Grace Lawrence. Jameson Alexander Ledoux. Jaron Lee. Jaman Curtis Lee. Lois Lee. Mercedes Lee. Rooney Lee. Bradley Roland Levergood. Wei Lee. Xiaoyu Li. Yujiang Liu. Zijian Liu. Jacob London. Megan Marie McKinnon. Louise Makowski. Anmol Malhotra. Jose Manuel Banzano Palacios. George Octavian Marcoux. Charlotte Irene Margell. Boban Markovich. Andres Mauricio Martinez Jimenez. Nicholas Martone. Manish Mastri. Raghav Mathur. Mary Whitaker Mayrath. Logan Kendall McDivitt, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence, and C. Stewart Shepard Distinguished Service Award. The citation reads, "For always bringing out the best in others through his service to the Darden Student Association and the Darden Christian Fellowship, Logan's infectious spirit, signature can-do attitude, and empathetic leadership have helped brighten the days and lives of students, faculty, staff, and community members." Congratulations, Logan. William Lee McElroy. Shane Patrick McKenzie. Abigail Margaret McKinney. David Hammond Means III. Chiagu Miller. Abina Mensa. Caroline McLean Meyer. Matthew Wright Milleron. Shreya Misra. Angel Emmanuel Monroy. Danielle Morales Martinez. Courtney Ann Morgan. Lorenzo Mosig Arellano. Rifki Naufal. Hui Fung Nguyen. Patrick B. Nilsson. Tobenna I. Nebe Agumadu. Bridget Nolan. Corinne Nicole Nort. Paulina Nunez Gomez. Peter O. Woba. Alexis Maria Orr. Connor John Orth. Yetunde Ibunduni Winnie Ogunwumi. Elizabeth Page Owen. Emily Paget. Anne Caperton Page. Devon Frank Page. Hayden Lawrence Palm, Manishi Parekh, Boris Leandre Gatchalian Paris, Parth Naresh Patel, Harit Mehul Pathak, Niharika Pendurthi, Roberta Maria Isabel Ongpin Periquet, Sri Kalyan Peruri, Cynthia Pestana Haddad, Ernest Petway III, Lin Hu Pham, Matthew Joseph Philly, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence, Christine Ashley Pecora, John Austin Pierce, David Tanner Powers, Allison Michelle Prescott, Surbi Pourwar, Newton Gaston Quantz IV, Alejandro Quintero Corral, Ashna Rambia, Zachary Raposo, Srajan Mani Rastogi, Adam Lee Reiser, Claire Julia Renner, Quinn H. Ree, Griffith Ridgway, Hans Malcolm Ringer, Valentina Sara Risto Rodriguez, Kristen Elizabeth Romanas, Caitlin Cosette Russell, Rachel Allison Sacco, Pranita Vinod Sadaverte, Matthew McQueen Sayre, Charlotte Sed, Luis Salas, Fernando Jose Salazar Vallarino, Elizabeth Saltonstall, Lauren Ashley Santella, Allison Ingram Schaefer, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence, Kelsey Schofield, Megan Janella Scott, Zihan Shah, Krishali Shah, Nishit Shah, Wiley Morris Sherman, W.K. Shin, Benjamin Lee Shoesmith, Duncan Sikador, Himanshu Singh, Maya Singh, Priyank Singh, Eric S. Smith, Kevin Patrick Smith, Patrick David Solberg, Stephen Nicholas Soames, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence, Sean Andrew Solomon, Myung-Hun Sun, Rachel Kristen Sorrells, David Robert St. Lawrence, Catherine Elizabeth Stadler, Miles Andrew Garrett Stroud, Christian Alexander Stiles, Ashley Sugianto, Catherine Victoria Sullivan, June Sun, Ife Taiwo, Stanislaus Maheswaro Crisandito Tandelilin, Caroline Thompson, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence, George Hammond Tillman III, Xing Kin To, Aman Tomar, Luis Daniel Alonso Torres Ramirez, Jesus Antonio Trujillo Diaz, Nidia Anastasia Tomalewa, George Thomas Euling. Pauline Mason Ukrop, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Adriana Vaz. Martín Vargas del Rio. I got it. Bianca Ray Ventura. Christian Ulrich von Hassel. Michael Edward Wolzak. Jing Wang. Yechen Wang. Catherine Welch. Laura Shields West. Lucas Alexander Whitcomb. Sergio Triotumo Wijanarco. David Turner Willett, Faculty Award for Academic Excellence. Caroline Alexandra Willis. John West Weiss. Kenyon Wright. Sheila Wright. Chinhao Wu. Matthew Wyckoff. Shida Zhu. Shui Yao. Michelle May Quen Yap. Luis Edmonds Zakas. Ting Zhu. Thomas Troy Zeman III. Congratulations, class of 2023. I wish all of you the power that you seek.
Congratulations, class of 2023. Let's give you all a huge round of applause one more time. Woo! All right, we're almost there. One final tradition we have is concluding the graduation ceremony. We hear the farewell song, The Irish Blessing, sung by Darden's Cold Call Chorus, which is a group of Darden students, faculty, and staff. Please welcome them onto the stage for this last benediction.
At the dear old UVA, that good old song of Wahoo, we'll sing it o'er and o'er. It cheers our hearts and warms the blood to hear them shout and roar. We come from old Virginia, where all is bright and gay. Let's all join hands and give a yell for Virginia, hooray, hooray, ray, ray, UVA!
Great job. So to conclude, congratulations to all of you. We're going to go capture the moment on the steps of Saunders Hall where you can throw your caps in the air, and afterwards guests are invited into the classroom building for some light refreshments. Thank you so much for all of you for joining. Congratulations to the graduates, and have a great summer. Enjoy the moment. Thank you.